Hello, hi. It has been, have I ever done like a proper, like quarterly wrap up on this channel? I know I think about it a lot, but I don't know if I ever have. Or even more books in the background. I have read so many books. Okay, wait, hold on. Hello, it's good to see you. If you were here for the first time, it is wonderful to have you here. It's nice to meet you. My name is Sam. Hi, welcome. Welcome to a quarterly wrap up. I am planning to start doing these now that I'm getting back into the swing of doing regular videos on here again and posting regularly again. I would love to sit down and do long form reviews with you guys again, and I think that if the right book approaches, I will do a long form review because I'll probably have a lot to say and want to go in depth with it. A couple pieces of housekeeping right off the bat. The floor I'm standing on is very squeaky. I'm sorry about that. There's nothing I can do about it. This was the location with the best lighting. I'm gonna try not to move around too much. The other thing is I did get dental work done earlier today, and the numbing agent that they used on this side of my face is, I can feel my entire face, but I can feel that the muscles are also just not reacting the same way as like this side. Can you tell? I can kind of tell when I'm talking that this like side feels like it's like lagging a little bit or doing weird things. It's totally fine. I probably have another 2 hours before that's back to normal, but that's the thing. And I just want to point out, as someone with a lot of anxiety, when I see someone in like a video that's just like not, something seems off, sometimes it triggers like anxiety in me. So I just want to let you know. I have, first of all, my laptop here with all my notes, and I have 19 books to talk to y'all about. I've split it into 4 sections. Part 1, classics. Part 2, nonfiction. Part 3, rants. There's 2 books in this category. And part 4, fantasy. Some of the books I'm going to be talking a lot about, and some of the books I'm not going to be talking a lot about. It really just depends on the book and on if I've already talked about it in another video. If I have, I'll mention that video here. I'll talk about it a little bit. I'll have these all bookmarked down below. And even though there is a rant section in the classic section and in the nonfiction section, I have other rants planned. And okay, we're gonna get into it because I have a feeling I'm gonna be talking for a while. We're starting off the classic section with actually a rant. So Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I hate this book. I'm so sorry to start off this video with such a cold fucking take. But I hate this book. I have read it now 3 times, and it does not get better with each reading. It does not. This is the gorgeous, was it Vintage? I think published it in the UK. In the US, it's the, oh, I can't think of the name, but I'll drop a link down below because this whole series is just so pretty, and I can't get enough of them. So I thought, you know, buying Frankenstein this edition might maybe make it a little better. No, I still hate it. I read it for the first time when I was in high school. It must have been high school, and then I read it again in college, and 2 very different teachers at 2 very different levels of education talking about different things about this book, and I hated it both times. I had to read it then. Now it has been, I read it sophomore year of college, so it's been about 7 or 8 years since I read this last, and that is a lot of time to grow, and I've read a lot more classics in that time. I have come to have very different opinion on books that I loved then or hated then that I've reread in more recent years. And with the new Guillermo del Franco, who? Guillermo del, so fucking sorry. Guillermo, the new Del Toro film that came out. I was like, I'm gonna reread this, and then I can see the film. And I have not seen that film. Also, I've heard it's not a good adaptation, but a good film, which that makes me want to watch it even more. I just haven't had the time. So he's like, I'll reread it. I'll reread it. I didn't like it. I do think I got more out of it this time. So I don't think it's a loss, and I'm not going to unhaul my copy. This is the only copy I own. This is the only copy I'm going to own. I don't plan on ever buying another copy unless I need it to like collect, kind of like complete a set maybe. But even then it's gonna be like a hard sell, because I'm sure I will reread it, but I don't need multiple copies of this book, even though there's so many pretty copies out there. I just don't need them. I got more out of it. I understood more of it, and I understood what was happening in the world at the time that this is set, which I do think having that broader historical understanding of this book, or of the contemporary events of this book, did again make me understand it more and not appreciate it more, but just interact with it more. I really appreciate that aspect of this time's reading experience. But every complaint I have about the book, I still have about the book. And I really went in with like a blank slate mind frame. I was like, I'm gonna like this book because everyone likes Frankenstein. Like, it is like one of the books. It is the godmother of science fiction, which I love science fiction, and the idea of this student creating life and then the monster, that life, requiring something from its creator. That is such an interesting concept, and theologically that is something really interesting to play around with. And I'm not going to say these aren't all very interesting ideas or interesting topics, but I just don't like this book. I don't like Mary Shelley's writing. I don't like the characters. I think that even if I drill down into them and really explore them, I just hate them all so much. I can't appreciate them. For this book in particular, I just cannot pull apart enjoyment and depth. I can do that with some books I dislike, but Frankenstein is not one of those books for me. Intellectually, again, I can look at the characters and say the metamorphosis, the evolution of the monster is interesting in XYZ ways, right? We get to see him basically from newborn to adult reckoning with his creator. And that's so cool as a concept, but I do not appreciate it in this book. It's not working for me. After I finished reading it, I said to myself, because I have a National Theatre at Home subscription, let's give the stage production a try. The acclaimed stage production with Johnny Lee Miller and Benedict Cumberbatch, where they switch role of Frankenstein and his monster in between stage, and National Theatre at Home has both editions. I did the Johnny Lee Miller as the monster because I just can't picture such a tall such a tall monster as Benedict Cumberbatch. And I did not have a good time with it. I do think it drills down into the ideas of the novel quite well. So if you have access to National Theatre at Home, or I know someone who does have access, I would recommend giving it a watch, especially if you do like it, or if you really want to explore the themes of it. I think it does a really good job, but again, I didn't enjoy it in that format. I'm just a Frankenstein hater. I guess this wasn't a full rant, this was just a mini rant, but Frankenstein is a no for me. It's such a big no, and I'm so sorry. Then, an author that I love and have literally traveled across the world to take a course on, Charles Dickens, I read To Be Read at Dusk. This is part of the Little Penguin Little Black Classics that are like, at this time, when this was sold, it was £2. Did I buy this in London? I don't remember if I actually bought this in London or because sometimes on Waterstones, when they're doing double points, if I'm doing pre-orders, I'll throw a couple of these in the basket to just get to the certain amount of points. It could have been that kind of situation as well. But To Be Read at Dusk. I'm a big Dickens girly, and this did not disappoint. It's been a while since I've read a Dickens. I've been kind of playing with the idea of, do I reread Tale of Two Cities? Because I read a retelling of Tale of Two Cities earlier this year that was just marvelous. It's called A Far Better Thing. It is by H.G. Perry. Really, really good. I strongly recommend that. Even if you've never read A Tale of Two Cities, I think it's good. But if you've read A Tale of Two Cities and you love A Tale of Two Cities, you have feelings about the ending. I think you'll really love this because it's from Sidney Carton's point of view. And Charles Darnay is his changeling, and anyway, Dickens! We're talking about the book I read more recently, which is To Be Read at Dusk. This is 2 or 3? 3. Oh yeah, 3. 3 little shorts. I mean, the total, it clocks in at 54 pages. So it is so tiny. The first one is To Be Read at Dusk. They're all ghost stories as well. which we love that. He's such a good ghost story writer. Oh my god, if you haven't read Christmas Carol, now is the perfect time to read it. It's so good, but if you haven't, it's a great ghost story, and if you have, I would recommend reading more of his ghost stories. These are all fantastic, very quick reads. To Be Read at Dusk, I loved the atmosphere of it. It just, the way it got me from like line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there were 5 of them, 5 couriers sitting on a bench outside the convent on the summit of the great St. Bernard in Switzerland, looking at the remote heights, stained by the setting sun, as if a mighty quantity of red wine had been broached upon the mountaintop, and yet had not had time to sink into the snow. Oh my god, I love me my Dickens. And then there's The Signal Man, which was my favorite of the 3. It gave me chills. It's about this guy who's talking to the signalman, like a train signalman. He does the signals, and in like a tunnel, I think, because there are accidents occasionally, and he's there to help prevent accidents or to protect people if an accident is occurring. And he also reads the signal, like the train signals. Like it's a big job. It's an important safety job, and he's been seeing these signals and seeing this like ghostly presence and interaction, and the signalman is telling this to our narrator, who's then of course telling it to us, and it's just so perfectly creepy. I have chills. I don't know, will you? Oh my god, maybe you can see. Can you see goosebumps just thinking about it? It's delightful. And then the final one is The Trial for Murder, which was good, but I don't think as good as the other 2. If you are someone who thinks they don't like Dickens, I really recommend reading some of his shorter stuff, and I think this would be a good place to start with any of those, but especially The Signalman, because it was just fantastic. Oh, okay, another author I love. Okay, one of my guys. But this one did not land with me. I just have a pile of books on my bed at the moment, which I'm grabbing these from. But that is A Poet Can Survive Anything But a Misprint by Oscar Wilde. This is part of the Penguin 90 anniversary editions. They did 90 of these little white classics. You're gonna see at least one more. My goal is to read all of them by the time Penguin turns 100. I think that is a totally reasonable thing. I don't own all of them. I own a handful that I haven't read and that I will be reading over the next couple months. Every time I read one, I'll buy like 1 to 2 more to just kind of fill it. They typically take me 1 to 3 days. So that's why, especially when I do my end of the year wrap up of everything I've read, you're gonna see probably a bunch of these. But A Poet Can Survive Anything But a Misprint by Oscar Wilde is like his witticisms in a way, and some of them are clever, right? The first couple sections are just really short little, really truly witticisms of his. Let me see if I can find one I really liked. All charming people, I fancy, are spoiled. It is the secret of their attraction. I agree. A really well-made buttonhole is the only link between art and nature. Fantastic. Fashion is merely a form of ugliness so unbearable that we are compelled to alter it every 6 months. All bad art is the result of good intentions. This one I actually really could meditate on for a long time. It is the spectator and not life that art really mirrors. That's very profound to me. This is from the section on Oscar Wilde. I have the simplest taste. I'm always satisfied with the best. Me too, my guy. I'm a big Oscar Wilde fan, even though I have not read Picture of Dorian Gray. I've read several, if not all, of his plays, and I have read probably all of his fairy tales that he wrote, which I love those to death. They're a great introduction to Wilde. And I've read De Profundis and annotated the shit out of that thing. It's kind of buried, so I'm not going to go digging for it at the moment, because it's also not, I'm not talking about De Profundis today. But I've read a lot of Wilde, and I've really liked all of it. De Profundis was a little hit or miss. I think it's one that I'll need to return to in like 10 years, maybe 8 years now, since I read it like 2 years ago, and reevaluate and re-interact with, because I think it's something that as I grow older, I'm going to have a lot of different opinions and nuanced belief of. But past those little vignettes, we get the decay of lying and observation, which is like a conversation between 2 people. And part of it was just the writing style was not working for me, even though I would say it was pretty stock. Wilde, I wasn't able to dig my teeth into it and enjoy it. And then the last bit is, I guess there's 2 extra. The Soul of a Man Under Socialism, which was fine. I think this is one I would want to return to sooner than anything else in this book and pull it apart and really, really annotate it and think about it and read what other people have said about it and just take like a month to really analyze. It's like a long essay. As I was reading it, I couldn't really grab on, and I wasn't enjoying the parts that I could grab onto. Not that I have to agree with everything a author says, but I just kept finding myself clashing with some of the things. And some of it's because I couldn't tell where he was being ironic versus genuine. And again, I think pulling it apart and really spending time with it and maybe finding, if I could find like someone far more intelligent than me talking about it online somewhere, I think that would also help. And then it ends with the truth of masks, which I'm gonna be so real. It's another essay. I don't remember anything from it, just that it didn't like make this better. So unfortunately, I was not a big fan of this. I'm not gonna get rid of it. Like I said, I really like Oscar Wilde. I think I would be really hard pressed to ever unhaul anything he had ever written. The other Penguin 90 on this list is also from an author I have loved, but I've only read 2 of her books and never anything of her shorter work. That is Lois the Witch by Elizabeth Gaskell. This is a complete novella. It doesn't have anything else in here. It is about Lois, who her parents tragically pass away, and so she is shipped to America, Salem, in, what is that, 1691. Salem in 1691, where she has an uncle and his family are living. She's never communicated with this uncle. I'm pretty sure she doesn't even know he exists at the beginning of the novella. And, you know, moving to America from England is quite the move, especially in 1691. I imagine that's got to be just so difficult. And she is in some ways just culturally at odds with her family in Salem, like her aunt and cousins, and it's about the hysteria of the Salem witch trials and poor Lois, who is caught up in the middle of it, so undeservedly. Of course, everyone who is caught up in the Salem witch trials, it was this mass hysteria event. I don't want to be like Lois was the only one involved who didn't deserve it. No, it's a fucking tragedy of American history. But this one rattled me. This rattled me so badly, and I think about it quite frequently now. It is a book. I don't know I don't know when I'll be able to return to it. I loved it. I don't know when I'll be able to return to it. I don't think I'm going to be eager to. I do like Elizabeth Gaskell, and I plan on reading others of hers that I haven't read yet. I have North and South, right? Oh yeah, it's under my bed. I'm sorry, I've got some classics under my bed, and it's under my bed. And I plan on reading North and South in 2026 because I forgot just how much I enjoyed her writing and especially her depictions of nuanced female characters. My favorite thing I've read of hers is Cranford. I couldn't think of it. Cranford, I love Cranford. It's actually one of my favorite classics, and the small nuanced differences of the women in Cranford is so delightful and enjoying and charming and enjoyable. And Lois the Witch is still very not charming but enjoyable because she brings that same artistry to it. I just don't know when I'm gonna reread it. I did get a lot out of it. I think I'm gonna be continuing to think about it just for years, which totally cool with. Okay, just a couple I wanted to mention. 2 of these because I just don't have a lot to say, and then one of these because it appeared in a vlog, and actually the last thing I do want to talk about a lot. So 3 things I just want to quickly mention, one I want to talk about. One of them I forgot to pull off the shelf because one of them's a Penguin 90. Okay, so I read Winnie the Pooh. I always liked the Disney Winnie the Pooh films when I was younger, and I've wanted to read the original stories, and I did enjoy them. Look at this map. I love this map. I love a good childhood map. I don't know what I was expecting. It wasn't exactly what I thought I was going to get. I enjoyed it. I will probably pick up, I think there's 2 other volumes of Winnie the Pooh centric stories. It wasn't everything I wanted. It was good, it was enjoyable. I think if the original stories had been a bigger part of my childhood, I would have gotten more out of it, but as it is, it was really just the Disney, was it a TV series or was it just films? But some of those were big in my childhood. And then I just don't have a lot to say about it. It was, again, just fine. The Book of Tea by Kakuzo Akakura. It was interesting. I wish I had more to say about it, you know. And then I don't have a lot to say about it because I talked about it extensively in my Frankenmuth reading vlog, October Nights by Gerard de Nerval. I loved this. 5 out of 5. Would recommend. Thought it was really good. Very atmospheric. Really feeding my just French and Parisian literature little quest I've been on this year, just accidentally. It's fed that well. The book I want to talk a lot about in a positive way is Jane Eyre. Okay, so you know how Frankenstein, I reread it this year and still hated it. I read Jane Eyre for the first time in junior year English class. Now, shout out to my English teacher junior year. You sucked. You sucked for a lot of personal reasons. You made me feel small and unseen, even though you were one of the nicer teachers to me, so I'll give you a little credit. But also, you couldn't fucking teach this book or other books we read that year. So, again, shout out to you. Was that too mean? Just, can I just say, sometimes it is, as someone who often felt invisible in high school, and even today, but like high school was terrible, it was oftentimes better to feel fucking invisible than to feel like a fucking idiot. Okay? Okay. So this was assigned junior year English right before spring break, and we got like, what, a week and a half for spring break? It was not a lot of time. And, you know, that's not a lot of time. We were assigned all of whatever part 1 is. This edition, I should say, did not break it up into volumes, so I don't remember exactly where part 1 ends. But we were assigned to read part 1 over spring break. And several students were like, well, I'm not going to be around for spring break. And she's like, well, you have to read it or I'm going to, you know, mark you down. And I read it over spring break. I read my portion. And it was hard to parse because part 1 is a lot of her childhood and is not particularly interesting because it has a lot of conversation of religion and goodness, but goodness through the context of religion and in a very dry, boring way, because small spoiler, but you're watching a childhood friend of Jane's slowly pass away, and it is like kind of grating and hard and horrible to read. And I read it and was like, God, I didn't get anything out of that. I didn't understand it. And I was a junior, so I had some skills at research, but not nearly enough to like go do some of my own. Nor do I think I was like old enough to just like read it and understand what was going on. Well, we get back to class at the beginning of the final term, and she says, okay, now that you've all read it, we're just gonna move on. And didn't fucking teach it or explain anything. Had it been properly taught to me in a way that I could have understood and enjoyed that first part, I would have then been able to go on and understand and enjoy the next 2 parts, because I think it's 3 volumes technically in normal editions that have it split up. So I just went through hating this book. I thought it was awful and dry, and I didn't get it. I didn't get any appeal for it. We watched the film and I was like, this is unenjoyable. It's really just a very boring classic. Now, why, Sam? Why did you reread it then? I wanted something gothic. Okay, I wanted something gothic. It was autumn. It was, when did I read this? October, early October, I think. And I just really wanted to fill that spot. So I was like, okay, I'll read Jane Eyre. It's a classic, but it's not that thick of a classic, and it's one that's often touted for beginners, so it's not gonna take me that long. Reader, it took me a day and a half. All I wanted to do was read this fucking book. It was so good. It was delicious. It's gothic, and the yearning. Oh my God, guys, the yearning. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps again from good books and 5 stars. One of my favorite classics. Now. I remember I started it and texted a friend. I was like, hey, I'm rereading Jane Eyre. And she was like, oh, cool. And then like that night I was like, I have like 6 chapters left, but I can't stay up any longer. She went, holy shit, didn't you work tonight? I said, yes, I did. And I couldn't put the book down. I ate it up. I want more like this. I will probably reread this like every fucking year because again, Jane is such a good protagonist. And understanding the first part of this book, I was able to connect with her so strongly. Not like necessarily we have like a shared experience, but I was like, I get you, girl. I get you. I get where you're coming from. And then when we get to Mr. Rochester, I don't know. I remembered him being like such a fucking horrible person for some reason, and he's not. I'm not gonna say he's great and like yeah, get yourself a Mr. Rochester. He's not like perfect, but oh my god, he was perfect to me. He's perfect for Jane. And then like with the feminist undertones of this book, how Jane's character arc goes. I don't want to spoil the ending, but oh my god, it was gothic and it was beautiful, and it's battling for top spot of classic romance with Pride and Prejudice, a book I love as well. So that's crazy. That's crazy that it's even touching Pride and Prejudice. But it is. I guess it's not that crazy if you also read classic literature and this is like a staple and you're like, yeah, Jane Eyre, duh. Not to me. It wasn't duh to me until I read it. And now 6 stars, 6 out of 5. I am so thoroughly obsessed. Tell me, the film adaptation I saw was the one with this one. I'll put it on screen. If there's a better adaptation, let me know, because I would like to see another film, because that one didn't stir anything in me. I probably will rewatch it when I'm craving this again and don't have the time to reread it right away. So good, it's so good. Okay. I had a lot to say about that. Maybe the best book on everything I've read. That's the end of my classic section though. I think I read the most classics. Nonfiction. So it was a DNF. I started reading a book that I don't have, I don't own it. I was just borrowing a copy. It's called Spring, Summer, Asteroid, Bird. And it is supposed to be a writing craft book that looks at the different modes of storytelling in Eastern art and literature and cinema versus Western art and cinema and literature. And the idea, spring, summer, asteroid, bird, is that rather than have like a beginning, middle, end, you have the spring section, summer section, which is like a direct build on the spring section, asteroid, which is like an asteroid fucking coming to Earth and shaking everything up, and then bird, which is connected, but also not connected in the same way that it would be like spring, summer, autumn in classic traditional Western media. Really interesting as a concept, and the introduction and first chapter or so where the author is discussing these differences and giving some examples, I was like, that is really cool. What a neat way to look at storytelling, what a neat difference in storytelling. And it was very accessible writing, and every chapter was a piece of mostly literature or cinema broken apart into these sections, and then I figured it was then going to be discussed at length, like how it is functioning, how it is working. I read the first of these breakouts, which was about the film Parasite, and I will say I understood this really, really well. I was like, okay, I see how it's working, how it is a fulfilling story, because I think on the surface, if you're unfamiliar with it, it can kind of sound strange. Like, how does this work? How do you actually put this into play? And you can. I mean, Parasite's a great example, actually. I think if you're really interested about this subject, there's probably articles online, and if there's not, you can just watch Parasite and kind of dissect how that movie works and the structure of it. But then, and it just, the way it fucking ticked me off, because I was like, I was reading this book to learn something. After describing Parasite, and quite lovingly done, the author then says, a Western writer, filmmaker had made this film, this is what it would look like. And then step by step tells you what it would theoretically look like by, let's say, like an American, like Steven Spielberg, let's say. I don't think that's inherently a bad thing to do, except that it was not being done in good faith, in my opinion, because the author changed the story, which I get is maybe the point, is you're trying to be like a Western creator would have changed the story in this way, but changed it to such a degree that you can't look at Parasite and say, well, a Western filmmaker would have maybe gotten rid of this twist and this structural change and would have come to a similar but not as important conclusion by following the traditional 3-act Western structure. Instead, the author just kind of like goes off on a fucking tangent, and then just kept saying like, and it's not as good, basically. And I was like, okay, yeah, it's not as good, but you've just straw-manned a film that doesn't exist. I agree, but I would have liked to have seen it in good faith, and how, you know, you look at it and you analyze it and you're like, well, if it had been like a 3-act structure, this is where things would have been lost, rather than just fucking changing the entire plot. Am I explaining this in a way? I hope I'm getting across. And it was just so annoying. I read a book like this for a high school history class, which was I can't remember the name of the book, but it was like a court reporter talking about an important case. Or I shouldn't say court reporter, just reporter who was also there for the court because she was covering this case. And the parts where she looked at what was happening and analyzed it, very interesting, very insightful. And she had some good points about if they had taken this angle instead of that angle, they might have had a stronger argument for the defense or whatever. But instead we go into tangents where she just did this like daydream, and if this had happened, then the judge would have said this, and then this would have happened, and then this would have happened, and then he would have been innocent. And it's like, okay, but I don't want to know what you wish had happened. I'm not here for fan fiction. I go to AO3 for that, like any sane person. And this was just doing the same thing. And it was really bothering me and annoying me. And I was flipping through later sections of Spring, Summer, Asteroid, Bird, and I was like, is it doing the same thing, or is it just like one-off for Parasite? And I just kept seeing little glimpses of this, and I was like, I'm not doing it, DNF. No good. I would recommend looking into this, though. I think it's a really interesting thing, and I think the first, like, was it like 30 to 40 pages? Really interesting. Get it from the library, read those. Maybe continue if you're curious, but I think you can get pretty much what you need to out of it. I obviously didn't finish it, so maybe it does do something interesting later on, but I couldn't stand it. I was like, this is so, I feel like I'm being talked down to in just such a way that I was like, I'm not that stupid. I'm not that smart, but I'm not that stupid either. And I don't like that you're strawmanning this argument. I'm not getting anything out of it. Surprisingly, I actually read two other nonfiction books this season. I'm trying to read more nonfiction in general. It's been a goal all year, kind of silent goal all year, and it's going to be a much more stated goal in 2026. One book that I'm not going to say a lot about because it's in my reading vlog that I mentioned earlier is The Living Mountain by Nan Shepherd. I really liked it. I do think, unfortunately, it was kind of a right book, wrong time situation, and that I would have enjoyed it more at a different different season of my life. I'm definitely going to keep it, and I'm going to read it again down the line, and I did enjoy it, I think, as much as I could have, because it is a beautifully written book and a really, if you're interested in nature writing, it is a good place to start. I still would say Robert McFarlane, which is the recommendation for this book, is the best place to start if you're curious about nature writing, nature nonfiction writing. But this is also a really good place, very digestible, very beautiful, very profound, and just very stirring. But the biggest nonfiction book I read was The Gulf, The Making of an American Sea by Jack E. Davis. I feel like I have a lot to say about this. I live in the Midwest, so I live by a major body of water, and that I live near Lake Michigan, but I don't live by an ocean or a gulf, and even though I'm not that far from the lake, I don't feel a particularly strong connection with it. I've traveled, I've seen the ocean, I've spent some time by the ocean, different oceans, Atlantic and Pacific, and I only kind of get it. I don't feel a strong connection to the oceans that way. Any ocean, any sea. And yet I was really, really curious about the Gulf of Mexico. But I wanted a history of it. I was curious. It had kind of been staring at me, and I was like, you know what, we're gonna do it. We're gonna read it. I listened to the audiobook of it and thought it was marvelous. It really felt like being at a museum and having an incredibly knowledgeable tour guide walk you through this museum dedicated entirely to the Gulf of Mexico. And I was like eating it up. I was like, oh my God, yes, tell me more. I just really loved hearing and learning about it. It's very dense. I do think I probably didn't retain nearly as much as I would have liked to, because there is so much in here and there's so much interesting stuff in here. But I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I feel like I have a better understanding of a kind of niche aspect of American history and of the United States of America, and that it's niche, and that's just like not an area I grew up or know anything about really outside of this book and if I guess have I ever seen the Gulf of Mexico? I want to say once when I was much, much younger, I probably saw it. I do feel like this was like such a great lens to get back into reading and learning about US history in this way. Again, because it's got that nature aspect, and I like nature writing. It's kind of my go-to nonfiction genre subject, not genre. I also feel like it's fairly accessible. It's definitely on the more dense end of things, but if you're like me and you're trying to read more nonfiction and learn more about the world, it's more accessible than others I've tried that are history focused. It's dry but accessible. I do recommend the audiobook, and I actually also recommend listening to like 1 to 2 chapters a day. I don't think I could have sat down and listened to it back to back to back, but driving to work every morning being like, time to listen to a chapter about the Gulf, it was such a joy and such a pleasure. Hailed as a nonfiction epic. Yeah, it is. It's a nonfiction epic, I would say. And I do feel like this is maybe important reading for a lot of people. Makes you look at parts of America through not always a human-centered lens, which is it was great. It was good. My favorite sections though were, we would get these little like human interest stories almost throughout, and those were my favorite bits, getting these windows into people who are very important in this region or at one time for one moment, if it connected to the Gulf and the history of the Gulf as Jack Davis was telling it. Those were my favorite bits to get into the window of their lives. So I would recommend this. I think I gave it 4.5 stars, just because it is a little on the drier end, but don't take that as a negative, because it's dry the way like an Attenborough documentary can sometimes be dry. Like you're so, okay, maybe that's not a good example. In the way a made-for-TV documentary can sometimes be dry, because you're still like really interested in the information and you don't need the like flowery prose to get you through it. The information is enough to sustain you. This is definitely that. Really recommend. Rants. I got some. Number 1. Let me see if I can pull up my Goodreads review first, actually, because I think I said a lot in there that'll get me going. I also think I'm gonna have to find a way to connect the power source, because I think the battery's gonna die soonish. Problem in a couple minutes from now. Oh, I wrote a lot. Okay, the book is Scorpion and the Night Blossom by Amelie Wenjiao. I read the... what is it called? One of her other series. Song of Silver Flame Like Night. I read that and I didn't love it, but I really liked it. I thought it was a pretty solid YA fantasy and I was really into it, and I haven't read book 2 and I'm going to, but it wasn't a priority. So I was excited for Scorpion and the Night Blossom, which is her adult debut and is a romantasy. I believe it's supposed to be. I gave it 2 stars on Goodreads. Do you hear my computer? This is about a girl who is going to go join a competition to become basically a deity so that she has the power to protect the people she cares about. That is like what it is pitched as, and she has to kind of decide who to trust. And of course that involves, I believe, was it a love triangle? I think it is a love triangle. It's a love triangle. Okay, for an adult book, this was written like, this felt like it was written younger than the YA book of hers. This was wildly disappointing, especially considering this is marketed as an adult book, but read more like a YA novel than her actual YA novels, which I have so far enjoyed. The writing style is fine, but the actual plot is a mess and the characters are paper thin. I was willing to maybe continue on to book 2 until the final 10% or so, when the protagonist says, "When this started, I was just a normal girl. As if I hadn't just read the entire novel and need to remind me what happened 200 pages ago." This next bit is spoilers. I don't recommend the book, though, so I would recommend the spoilers. Besides consistently recapping what has happened, even when I've just read what's happened, there's so much padding. My biggest gripes are the 1, fantasy racism, 2, useless plot devices, and 3, reveals at the end. Number 1. She hates guy number 1, not bothering names, because literally these characters are the blandest versions of generic fantasy people. But she hates him because he's half demon. Like, hates him, even as he consistently proves himself to be a decent person. And it always just comes back to her being like, well, he's a demon, and demons are evil, so he's evil. Casting him as evil for his genetics, making it feel a lot like fantasy racism. Like, yes, the supernatural demons are, I suppose, evil in this narrow worldview, but why isn't there any nuance at all? And why do you keep hating on this guy? And why does the author let her hate the guy and cast him as evil in the end, justifying her fantasy racism? Because in the end, it's like, oh, he was evil, actually, or is basically on the evil path, because of course he is, because he's a demon, and demons are evil. I was like, fuck. What the fuck? I get it. In book 2, she'll come to realize he's not really that bad, and like, okay. It's presented here pretty terribly, and readers like me who aren't getting to book 2 are left with quite a sour taste in our mouths. Number 2, it starts as a competition story, and by the end forgets that it's a competition story. It wasn't even interesting, and other characters competing weren't exactly given personality or stakes, but at least that's a structure of some sort. At the end, she just gets the immortal pearl a different way, and no one even cares about the competition anymore, and it's not brought up. Okay, yay, why was it structured that way anyways? And number 3, of course she's going to be with the prince, and it's low-key fated without being soulmates. Of course she's the daughter of a goddess. Of course we needed big reveals. There was no setup that made these revelations feel like anything at all. Where's the emotion? And then out of the spoilers, look, I'm not going to continue the series, and her next adult series I'll probably go into hesitantly. I do plan on continuing her YA books, which I haven't finished either series for, but have enjoyed each. I think this book was just a really big miss for me. That actually said a lot more than I remembered writing. Normally don't write in-depth Goodreads reviews, but I think that succinctly says a lot of my problems with it. It was pretty piss poor bad. You know, it was the fantasy racism that really was the fucking stake in the heart of this book for me, because I was like, what's the messaging? And I'm all for giving books the opportunity to blossom in a larger series and to have something interesting to say later on. I'm all for thinking in book 1 a character is a bad guy, and then I'm all for this benefit of the doubt. There are fucking Stormlight archives. The way the Parshendi are depicted in book 1 and the Parshmen are depicted in book 1 is not exactly the greatest light, and there's a very justified reading of that, slavery is bad. The treatment of these people as inhuman is bad. But Sanderson had in that book, and outside of that book in his other works, but if you look at that book alone, built up enough of a case for me to believe he was going to continue embracing this series and these characters with nuance. He was clearly giving us the point of views of characters with an upbringing and a belief system that is contradictory to, let's say, my personal values. Probably a lot of readers, hopefully all readers' personal values in the regard of the Parshmen, but was not, as an author, seeming to say this is good. And small spoiler, but if you read the series, there's a lot of you get it's trust, right? It doesn't stay that way. Like it's Sanderson is not like, yes, this race is meant to be enslaved. And he doesn't stick with that. I'm very much simplifying this, but he had built up enough goodwill in that book alone, in the first Stormlight Archives, to not at all make me think, okay, well, he's all for this. In The Scorpion and the Night Blossom, I did not feel like we had enough goodwill built in, because there was no depth to anything. There was no nuance to anything. I don't trust Amelie Wen Zhao to continue this series in a way that actually allows her to look at the situation she has set up and tackle it appropriately. And I'm actually, maybe she does. I'm not going to say she doesn't. I haven't read book 2. I'm not going to read book 2. It's not out yet. February, I think. If an author hasn't built up enough goodwill in book 1, then I do think that is just as inexcusable as actually supporting it throughout the series. I think you have to be able to, like, no, this is clearly just a character's point of view, but the writing is not good enough for me. I don't actually think she believes in this fantasy racism. I'm not saying that. I'm saying she didn't give me, in this book, like if I look at this book on its own, she didn't give me enough to make me think, okay, well, this is clearly a complex topic to discuss. I should have DNF'd it. I really just kept thinking the book was going to get better, and it just did not get better, and it just kept getting worse. And then at the end, everything was like happening, and reveal after reveal after reveal, and I was like, this is so fucking boring. It's so boring, and nothing was built up, and no character was interesting, and we get, what, like a backstory for a horse in like one of the last chapters, and I was like, why do I care? Why do I care? And I don't care. That's the answer, is I don't care. I didn't care about this book, these characters, or the things happening, and I wish I had, because it is a beautiful book. aesthetically, but I already got rid of my copy. That's already gone. That's already gone. Goodbye to that. I gave it 2 stars. That's crazy of me. Probably closer to like 1.5 stars. Now that I'm thinking of it. The other rant I have, this other big fantasy rant I have for you. This really shouldn't come as a surprise if you have been around my channel for the last 5 years. It's House of Flame and Shadow. I hated this book a lot. I thought it was really bad. I had put off reading it. I hated A Court of Silver Flames. You can definitely check out that review. I stand by pretty much everything I said there. I have a much shorter Goodreads review, but I think I can actually probably read a bunch of my texts that I was sending to someone who was like, yes, I'll finally read it. I had put it off because she just doesn't use an editor anymore, and I don't think she's that strong of a writer to not have an editor. I don't think any writer is that good of a writer to not have an editor, except maybe Lord Dunsany, okay, who existed in a pre all of this period. Okay. This is my review. I said 2.5 stars maybe. Again, this is probably actually closer to 1 star. It was not good. It was a terrible ending. I will say spoilers for the Crescent City series. I don't think I'm going to talk about anything in particular. I might, so just in case. But I wouldn't even recommend starting that series. I didn't really love book 2. It was like, okay. And I hated this one so much. I don't think I'll read another book set in this world. Okay, what did I just read? This was awful. I'm so upset. Like, nothing felt earned. Where was the buildup? The emotional and the actual buildup. Characters just forced to dance around the story rather than any natural progression or consequences. And Jesus Christ, find a new trick in the book. This was the same ending I read twice before in her other series. If this were another author or another series, I wouldn't feel so let down. But TOG is actually good, and most of Ekatar is actually good, and CC1 is probably her best book. This, terrible book. Bitch eating crackers mode after like 45%, and then there was no turning back. I don't even know if I'd read another book in the series. I have to be so honest. That was my Goodreads review. I really stand by that. It was really bad. I think the big issue is really nothing felt earned. It takes place over the course of like a week or 2 weeks or something, and it was like go go go, but in the most boring way possible. It was like we have to get from this point to 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 this point. I was like, okay, and then characters were dying, and I was like, okay, I don't care. I have no emotional connection to you anymore. Every emotional connection I had to you is completely severed. Bryce was acting so fucking dumb the entire time. And when she's in, okay, I'm gonna spoil this stuff. When she's in Prithian, she's like fucking shit up, and she's like, but I'm a special star child. Oh my God, Bryce, shut up. Shut up. Stop being such a main character. I get it. You are the main character of this book, but you're actually not the main character of life. You're not the main character of this world. And then at the end, when she fucking abolishes the monarchy or whatever, she's like, and it's on paper, so no one is a royal anymore. And I was like, okay, that's so great, but we have like so many better, more nuanced takes on monarchies and monarchial governments. Monarchial, that's the word, right? You know, and I think you can have really interesting nuance. And I think it's also okay though to kind of have like a fantasy kings and queens. I think that we can allow ourselves that. I think it's fun sometimes. But you can also have really nuanced takes on it. And in fact, one of the books I'm going to talk about in the final section of this, the fantasy section of this, in the author's note, the book does have a nuanced view of this, although it's not the focus. But in the author's note, the author of this book is talking about Terry Pratchett and his take on monarchies in the Discworld series, which, let me actually just read that. Because this fucking just discussion of a quote by Terry Pratchett is 1,000 times better than what Sarah J. Maas tries to pull off in the last 25 pages of Crescent City 3, which was a terrible fucking book. Or perhaps our fascination with kings and autocracy. I can't speak. And autocracies is more innate. As Sir Terry Pratchett once put it, it's as if even the most intelligent person has a little blank spot in their heads where someone's written, kings, what a good idea. And then we're going to skip to the end of the author's note. It's a good author's note where he picks this thread up. I mean, he talks about it more, but it's a little spoilery, I think. Because all the characters in this story, like all humanity apparently, have a little blank spot in their head that says, kings, what a good idea. The idea is powerful and seductive and should not be underestimated. To be a civilization of any worth, however, means acknowledging the idea and then condemning it as laughably, madly stupid. May we come to live in such a worthier world, and soon. Anyway, we'll talk about this book slightly in the next portion. This book tackles it in a nuanced way, and even just the fucking kings. What a good idea. Pratchett is a genius, obviously, and Sarah J. Maas is like not, but Oh my god, this book was just so bad and it did everything so terribly. Let me see if I can find the the text I was sending. Ooh. Sorry, I just my hold for Hamnet audiobook just came in. I said I'm slightly tired by how many POVs there are, but I'm very into all the lore dumping we're getting. I will say, yes, I appreciated the lore we got. And yes, I fucking hated how many point of views there were. And Therian is the worst character. And we need to stop pretending like he matters, because he was so unimportant. She forced him to be important. It made no sense. And even in forcing him to be important, it was really bad. I really like Nesta, Bryce, and Azriel. Such a fun combo. Everyone else is fine. No one else seems to be doing much, which is why I'm tired of so many POVs, except Lydia. I'm enjoying her, which I did enjoy her for like the first half. And then when her and Rune get together, I was like, yeah, I don't care anymore. It's fine. Whatever. Also, Bryce was high-key making some dumb decisions. I'm like, girl, you can't go around just breaking things. You're not the main character on that world. Then I said, okay, I'm about halfway in so far. It's just fine. Therian is annoying me as always. I hate how much page time he's getting. He's just married Flynn's sister, which I feel like such a random plot point, so I hope it ends up being important. It did not. Everyone is basically on the island except Ethan and Jessica, who it sounds like are headed there. And honestly, Sigrid being a Reaper or whatever also feels fairly random, but is at least interesting. I stand by that. Also, oh yeah, I said apologies on spelling because I'm doing audio and can't remember how to spell any of the names. The way Bryce treats Hunt, very strange, and I hated it. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it ends, in part because I do want to move on from this book. Okay, I'm nearly done with part 2. Bryce and Hunt are in hell getting answers to things, and I just don't care very much, and that makes me so sad. It feels like there's all this nothing building up to more nothing. I wish there had been a way for books 2 and 3 to be combined and streamlined, and then a different plot or something for book 3. Just started part 3 and LMAO. Now everyone is in one place, but it's like Ethan updated them on what had happened ... After he was done, they all insert some appropriate reactions, and then Bryce updated them on what had happened ... After she was done, they all insert some appropriate reactions. I'm dead. It's about to fucking die. God damn it. Slightly different angle because I needed to plug you in. So sorry about that. I've also been talking for so long. I'm so sorry. I hope I'm interesting. Not to be nitpicky about it, but there's very little momentum and it keeps stalling out at scenes like this and like no character development so far. I'm so frustrated. If it wasn't an SJM book, I wouldn't hold it in such a high standard. Now I'm like in the midst of the werewolf storyline and it's so bad. Like, what the fuck was that? What was that storyline? What was the point of any of it? If you wanted Ethan to be alpha or whatever, there's other ways to do that. You didn't have to like keep jumping through like hoops you kept placing down. It was like, okay, it was like, here's a hurdle. Hold on, here's a hurdle. But they didn't exist. Like, these hurdles weren't here when this was being jumped. It was like, okay, now that you jumped that, new hurdle. It was stupid. I couldn't. Bryce trading her parents for the mask is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And Therian's plot continues to just be dumb. I'm so mad at this book. And then like an hour later, I'm like, actually, no, I've decided her trading her parents is actually hilarious. I would love to have a Nesta POV story about having to babysit these two randos. I have 12 chapters left and have no tension in my body. I'm used to being freaked out by her endings. What happened, dude? I'm gonna have to reread TOG next year to remind myself why I like her writing. LOL. She made a black hole to eat another black hole. What? Then I said, I've been freed. It's done. It was so boring. Nothing felt earned by the characters, if you know what I mean. And those were the live texts I sent to my friend. It was just the most tedious, driest thing I've read in a while. What was the last really rough thing I read? I guess Scorpion and Night Blossom, but that was quick. I think I read that in like 3 days and I was like rushing through the ending and didn't care. What else was like really fucking boring? I tend to get rid of books I don't like. So I'm like looking at my shelves. I was like, what was it? What was it? But no, I don't have it anymore, whatever it was. Oh, the last really tedious book I read, and I didn't even finish it, it was a DNF, was The Sun and the Void. That was February 2024. That was probably it. So sorry, I really wanted to like it. I just couldn't. Anyway, I'm not bashing that book. It's not worth bashing that book. But at least with Sun and the Void, I'm like, if you liked it, I think there is like a value there. Crescent City 3, I don't think there's any value there, and I think you're crazy if you liked it. I'm not afraid to say it. Now that we're done with the rants. Final part are fantasy books I read. I'm just gonna quickly mention 2. I did read Alchemized, and then I read Drop of Corruption. This is the one that has a really nuanced take on monarchy, and I would strongly recommend this series. I kind of talked about, no, I didn't kind of. I did talk about this series and this book in my detective fantasy video, which please check it out. 4 more books to talk about. All of them I mark as like some of the best books I've read this year. So Hell yeah. Number 1. No one's talking about this book. Why isn't anyone talking about this book? And by no one, I mean like I just haven't seen it. I'm sure people are talking about it, but like why aren't more people talking about it? It was really good, and it really like, this is the kind of romantasy I crave. This was A Dance of Flies by Brittany Arena. It is about a non-traditional character. It's about the type of fantasy protagonist I feel like you don't see in romantasy, because you really just see these like badass women trying to do badass things. It's about a dancer, Vasily, who was falsely accused of murdering someone and was then kept in prison for 2 years, which led to her developing chronic pain and a disability that makes it impossible basically for her to dance the way that she used to. Or not impossible, it makes it very, very difficult. She's definitely has to surmount quite a lot. And I guess impossible in that she used to be very not tied down by any pain, but now she does have to deal with that. And she is manipulated by the same person who had her unjustly accused, who's the king, into being his spy and secret agent at this event. And while she's there, she is doing that because she's basically been blackmailed into it, but she is also learning how to be herself and find worth in herself. And it is a romantasy. There's kind of, it sets up like it's gonna be a love triangle, but it's not. There's this, is he a king or is he a prince? It's the king's brother. Oh, he's the king of the East. King of the East. There's a romance with him, and he's a great character, and she's a great character, and they have just fantastic chemistry. And every time I sat down to read this, I was just delighted and inspired and adoring it. And it is definitely the direction I want to see more romantasy head in that it is not the typical direction that almost every other romantasy is heading in these days. It is really, really wonderful, and I strongly, strongly recommend. And thank you, Fairy Loot, for doing an edition, because I wasn't going to read this, except that it was a Fairy Loot pick. And yeah, one of my favorite books of the year, probably. Then we have, this was a book, oh my god. Again, I was gonna read this book, but I wasn't gonna prioritize it, except that it was a Goldsboro pick, and that is The Maiden and Her Monster. This was so good. This is by Maddie Martinez. It's so, so good. You know what? It gives like Wolf and the Woodsman a lot, like the vibes of that. It's sapphic. It is, it's so good. It was, I could just like sink it. I could sink my teeth into it. Do you hear the children? School must have just gotten out, which means I have been talking for like, I'm gonna have to edit this a lot. I've probably been talking for over an hour. Maybe more, actually. It is about this woman who, or there's a monster supposedly in the woods terrorizing her people, who are already being terrorized by other people with more power. It's a religious persecution. It's very clear that it's a stand-in for Judaism. Just so you know. And it's a religious persecute. Her people are being religiously persecuted and basically seen as outliers. It's not hiding itself. It's a parable, commentary on like anti-Semitism, especially like in a more historical context. Like again, it's giving The Wolf and the Woodsman, which is also doing that. And anyway, where was I going with this? Oh, so there's a monster in the woods, and to protect someone she cares about, she's like, I will go into the woods and I will kill the monster and prove that it wasn't my people that hurt your people. And she does, and she meets the monster, who is a golem. Kind of that's the monster. It's like monstrous. It's a golem. She's Gollum. And she's like, I'll make a deal with you. I'll turn myself in if you help me get the guy who created me freed. And they go on this quest, and they fall in love, and it's really sweet. And it's fairly intense, actually. Not the relationship. That's very sweet. But the book, it's fairly intense. The writing is phenomenal. This being a debut blew my socks off. I cannot wait to see what Maddie Martinez does next. Auto by author, absolutely. And just this book was really, really good. Very wintry, actually. Very wintry vibes if you're looking for something good wintry. This was a highly anticipated read for me. I read it immediately. Kill the Beast by Sarah Swift. Oh my god, it's so good. It was so good. This was like crack, okay? I like ate this up so fast. I was like, oh, feed me more, feed me more. It's a, no, that's gonna give it away. the characters are the shining point of this book, and I was addicted to them. And there's good angst and there's good relationship. I would say it's romantasy if you would consider like Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher romantasy. I would say then this is romantasy. I would say Sword Heart's romantasy, but like on the fantasy end of that, like definitely much closer to the fantasy end. And I would say this is maybe one notch more fantasy than that, but is maybe romantasy in the same way, or it could be classified as fantasy with heavy romance. That's where I put this. If you like T. Kingfisher, you'll like Sarah Swift, and I would actually recommend this to anyone. Also, you know what? If you like Sarah Beth Durst, I think you'd like this too. It's not like cozy, but it was giving me those vibes. Lady Nights, if you like that trend. And speaking of, if you liked that trend and you haven't for some reason read this, one of the was it, were we calling it the Silver Trio? No, maybe that was just me calling it that. Anyway, one of the big Lady Night books of the year. And it was so good. It lived up to it. It made me just have a lot of faith. I don't know in what, just in fantasy in general. The Second Death of Locke by Tori Bovalino, or I'm sorry, V.L. Bovalino. Again, I think you could maybe call it romantasy, but I think it's much closer to fantasy with a heavy romance. Heavy romance? Like a romance as a key plot point, but not necessarily the only plot point in my opinion. This delivered everything I wanted and then some, and the thing that I took away from it more than anything, besides being just a fantastic book and like a really enjoyable read, was the fact that it really looks at the trope of sacrifice in the fantasy genre, particularly the trope of female sacrifice and women with power sacrificing themselves. Multiple characters. It's not just one character. But it really analyzes this. What it had to say about that, I thought, was a long time coming and very well said in this book. I loved it. So those last four are some of my favorite books of the year. So when I do my best books of the year wrap up at some point video, it probably won't come until 2026. But when I do that, you'll probably see all those on there because they just were delicious, 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 delicious. Okay, I've talked for so long. I have been kind of hectic in this video. I'm so sorry. I very intentionally made sure to film this after I had finished eating because I was like, after I finish eating, I'll have a lot of energy. And I'm right because I've had so much energy. I know I don't bring this high energy to every video, and I don't think I even could, even if I wanted to, but today I have enough sugar in my system that I could. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with me. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. If you've read any of these books and you want to talk about them, I would love to talk about them with you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let's talk. Thank you guys so much again for getting us past 1,000 subs. Means the world to me. You guys are some of my best friends. Bye. See you next time.